Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Now the chair will recognize himself for 5 minutes for questions. Let me begin by thanking both of you for being here and for both of you for the important work that you do. Dr. Gottlieb, I'll start with you, and I wanted to ask you about the executive order that was signed by President Trump at the beginning of this year that had to do with the one in, two out rule of regulations that had that were being imposed by the agencies, a rule, by the way, that I very much support and am very happy that he put into place. But I was just wondering, has this really impacted you in any way in trying to implement CARE or cures?
Not in a negative fashion, Congressman. I mean, we've periodically, over the course of the history of the agency, taken opportunities to do periodic looks at our regulations to make sure that they're not outdated, that they're still having their intended purpose. And I think that the executive order provides us another good basis to do that, and that's an important exercise. We have certainly been able to find places where there are regulations that are outdated or maybe no longer relevant that we think perhaps we could repeal in its entirety. I mentioned a couple of times we have a regulation defining standards of identity for the baking of cherry pies. We have one such regulation on the books. But keep in mind that the executive order applies to regulations that are imposing new regulatory burdens. Many of our regulations are deregulatory. In many cases, we're promulgating regulations that's actually saving money and making the process itself more efficient. Good. And so we've been able to operate very efficiently under that framework, and we think it's a constructive framework.
Great. Dr. Gottlieb, you and I have spoken many times. As you know, currently I'm the only pharmacist serving in Congress, and of importance to me and to all of my colleagues, of course, is the opioid epidemic in our country. One of the things that I have pushed as a pharmacist has been the fact that in my mind there is a gap, if you will. I refer to it as a gap between what physicians can prescribe for pain, that being Tylenol, acetaminophen, tramadol, if you will, and then you go to the opioids. And I refer to that as the big gap there. Now, once you get past perhaps Lyrica and Neurontin, you really don't have any other choice but to go to the opioids. And as part of cures and as part of CARE, you've been giving the authority in the FDA of streamlining, of fast-tracking some of these non-addictive treatments. Have you done anything to, first of all, have you gotten from the pharmaceutical manufacturers any applications for these type of drugs, and have you done anything to implement this?
We're seeing the development of what you'd refer to as non-addictive opioids, drugs that maybe hit the same receptor but through a different pathway and might not have the same addictive qualities. I mean, this still needs to be demonstrated through rigorous science, whether in fact that's going to hold true. But we are seeing the development of these kinds of products. As you know, some of them are in early stages of development. Such products would qualify potentially for all the opportunities for expedited review, including breakthrough therapy status. And that would be something that would be confidential, however, unless the sponsor chose to disclose it. I would also pull into the discussion the development of medical devices, because we talk about systemic therapy for the treatment of pain in many situations where the pain itself is very localized. And if there's a way to, through a more sophisticated device, deliver anesthesia locally, you can potentially prevent the application of systemic therapy. And so we're seeing those opportunities as well, and we're going to be taking steps in the near future to try to incentivize those kinds of opportunities.
And you, of course, understand how imminent this problem is and how we need help. So I suspect this will be on the top of your to-do list.
It is on the top of my
Dr. Collins, I suspect NIH is very much involved in this in collaboration as well. I know that your partnership for accelerating cancer therapies is something that you've been working on to address really the cancer problem, but my hope is that this is something that you will duplicate, if you will, and to deal with the opioid problem as well.
And we are, in fact, deeply engaged in that, Congressman. We will, in fact, on December 12th and 13th, hold a meeting of 33 pharmaceutical company representatives, NIH and FDA, building on studies that we've been carried out over the last few months to really put in place a framework for a public-private partnership that's never been tried before to do exactly what you're talking about, to develop these non-addictive but highly potent pain medicines, which we desperately need. Just point out this morning in the New England Journal, there are 2 publications on the development of monoclonal antibodies against something called CGRP that are showing great benefit for migraine for people who've been resistant. It's a good example of a non-addictive kind of pain medicine, working on a very different pathway than opioids. We have a lot of basic science we can build on now to do that, but we need the full partnership of industry as well, and I think everybody's ready to do that.
There's no question in my mind about it. As I've said, over my years of practice in pharmacy, I've seen nothing short of miracles come out from the research and development from the pharmaceutical manufacturers. They need to step up now, and they really need to help us with this problem. This is a national epidemic, and I'm very confident that if they set their minds to it, that they can do just that.
And they are ready to do that. It's been really quite exciting working with companies over the course of the last 6 or 7 months to see just how ready they are to roll up their sleeves and put their time and resources into this problem.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you, both of you, and your cooperation in assisting them and fast-tracking this as much as we can. Okay. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Long, for